All right. Welcome, all the viewers of this first DNN Dev Hangout. Welcome to this episode. In this episode, I'll be joined by three other people. First, I will introduce our resident experts, Chris Hammond, Chris Stock, as some of you might know him, famous from his templates, and and Kelly Ford, the Xmod guy.
Yep, that's me. Happy to be here.
Perfect. And both of these guys have an impeccable record in the DNN community, as many of you will know. They've been with us since the very start. And the invitee for today is Ash Prasad from DNN Corp. Hi, Ash.
Hey, Peter. How are you guys? Yeah,
Good,
this is Ash from.
So what do you do? What do you do at DNN Corp?
Yeah, my title is VP of Engineering and Support. So primarily look into all the development way, and then finally the support activities at DNN.
Cool. So basically, you do everything that we find very interesting.
Yep.
All the technical stuff. That's cool. So today's episode, as what we thought would be interesting to try and do, is to download the source package of DNN and to hit F5 and see that run. Now, this will make some of us in the DNN community snigger, because that didn't really work ever that way. But this time we're going to try it and see actually what needs to be done to get that to work. So for this episode, what we'll do is, since Ash knows everything about this and he knows how to get this up and running, we'll have Chris run this. He'll be our guinea pig. And Chris, you ready?
Yeah, I think so. I'm going to go ahead and share the screen.
Perfect.
And as we get started there, I am actually going to, before we really jump into it, I'm going to ask Ash, I'm going to put him on the spot, and ask him to maybe talk about why someone might do this. And I'll talk about why someone might not do it. So I'll let you start with why they might.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, DNN is an open source product, and many people are thousands of websites running DNN, and there are so many developers who are actually developing based on DNN. So if something is not working, I mean, instead of kind of pulling here and asking people here and there as to why something is broken, or I don't understand why this works this way, you can simply just run this in a Visual Studio and kind of step through it. The moment you step through the product, I mean, you start to get to see the local variables, the program flow, and things like that, and you get to understand a lot more better just as compared to just using the product. So it's mostly meant for developers who want to understand and kind of troubleshoot yourself, right? So that's always the fun part, how the thing works. Once you get a hang of it, it's very easy to actually go to the next level to contribute to the platform. We always encourage people to kind of submit pull requests and help with the community, help with the greater good for the open source ecosystem. So yeah, so that's the motivation here.
Okay. So I'm going to take
Kelly, have you ever built the DNN source code?
Yeah, but just locally. I haven't tried to set it up in the way that Chris is going to do today. In fact, I would like to invite Ash over to my house next time I try to do this, so I can sit and just kind of walk me through the whole thing.
And
I'm looking forward to this.
How would you, when you go to the source code, I mean, what would be typically the scenario for you as a module developer?
Well, typically it's to see if I broke anything, if there are any I would say negative interactions with what I'm trying to do, because Xmod Pro it tries to stay as separate as it can from the DNN source code, and uses the API when necessary. But I would want to make sure that if I'm making certain calls, I want to see what the values are. Let's just say there's some sort of like a registration tag that I have in Xmod Pro. I want to see exactly how that from what I do, how that propagates throughout the system, so I can be sure that there aren't any negative side effects, for instance.
All right, cool. And you, Chris?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been working with DNN for quite some time, as all of us have been, and I'll be honest, the last time I tried to compile the source package of DNN was probably version 3, maybe version 4, just because I honestly haven't had a need. So I feel one of the common misconceptions for the open source project are people assume that they have to start with the source package and compile that and use that to build a website, which is not necessarily the case. It is a good thing to be able to do. It's a good thing to be able to utilize, but it isn't critical for launching an application or launching a website based on the platform. But I'm anxious to kind of go through the process today. Like I said, it's been quite some time. It's probably been 10 years, maybe less, since I've done this. So I'm going to start, and I'm going to kind of throw it out there for Ash here and there. But just to start, the first thing I've actually already done this just to speed up a little bit, but you need to download the source package. And to do that, you can navigate to dnnsoftware.com. In the very top bar, there's a little download option. You can choose platform. And from the platform page, you'll notice the first couple of links here. You've got a download DNN platform and then evoke. The platform download here is actually going to take you to the Microsoft web app gallery or web gallery. So we're going to scroll a little bit further down, and you can get into a couple of other different package options. So for today, I've already downloaded the full application source code option, which is this download button here. So I have that locally on my machine. In a downloads folder, I have already extracted the zip file as well, just to save time. But it really doesn't take all that long to download and extract the contents there. So there we have a source code package. And I'm actually going to kind of go back over to Ash here and see what he recommends in terms of setting up the location where we put these files and what we need to do from there.
Yeah, so it's a very good point. So let's open up the README file. There's a README file that we put in here. So we're not going to read the whole thing. Well, oh, oops.
Let me see if I can open it with something else here that might work with the format.
So while we're doing it, so we just minimize that for a second. I want to go back to the folder structure. So at the 9.0, what we did was that, so when we're building the persona bar for 9.0, one thing we wanted to make sure that anytime we were making changes to the product, we're not actually changing a whole lot into the core of DNN. That's always a scary part when you're trying to build a larger project. You want to make sure that the underneath the core is not as much change. So for that reason, we actually kept anything on persona bar into a separate repository, and which is what you're seeing here. So the DNN.platform folder up there is the actual original platform. And then edit bar, if you go back one level up, yeah, so edit bar is the edit bar that you see at the bottom of the screen when you go into edit mode. That's a separate repository. pb.extension, these are all the extensions, persona bar extension, and that's a whole separate repository. And then finally, the pb.library, which is sort of the fundamental base library, which is to be used to build any persona bar extension. So right now, so if you were to build this from the source code GitHub, you're going to have to clone 4 repos and kind of build them one by one. And then they're all wired up in such a way that their artifacts go into the DNN platform folder. We'll get to that. But when we build a source package, well, we said that don't bother building the other thing. We would already put the compiled packages within the DNN platform folder itself. So, Chris, if you can go into the DNN platform, I'll tell you what I mean. So go into website.
And of course, Ash, if you clone from GitHub, you'll get the whole history as well of the project, which can be a huge volume as well. So that would be another advantage, of course, of using the source package. You just get the latest state, or at least that state.
This makes good sense. Yeah, definitely. So, good point. Yeah, website, and then you go into the install folder and go into the module. As you can see that all of the persona bars, if you look into the names, right, they're all persona bar, right? And then there's one at the top, which is the edit bar. very first one. And within the persona bar, you're going to see the UI, I think the third from the bottom. So that was the one for the library. So these you don't, and these are a little bit difficult. It could be a bit daunting to build. And not difficult once you get a hang of it. It's easier. We'll get to it a bit later time because that requires NPM and Node.js. It has a React.js component. So we're not going to be able to have time to dig into all of that today. We'll simply focus on the C# part of it. So what we want to do is, Chris, we want to open the solution file at the root of dnn.platform.
Okay. Do I need to put this into a particular folder, or can I just?
No, we're just going to try to run it from here itself. So run it from here. All we have to do is that we're going to have to point to your IIS to the to this particular folder, the website folder.
So which of the two solution files am I going to start with?
The platform, the one that you highlighted.
All right, let's see what Visual Studio is going to do here. So I have a, just to point out, I have a Community Edition version of Visual Studio installed here on this virtual machine. I already have IIS installed, and I have SQL Server Express installed here as well.
Sounds good.
So it'll take just a sec here while it loads up the various projects in the solution.
Ash, a quick question while we're waiting for that. If you don't have SQL Server Express, or say you're using regular SQL Server, are there any changes that you have to make in this process in order to get it to run?
No, really, no. I think what you would end up here is that at the end of this whole thing, you would get onto the install page if everything works, and at that time you should be able to just specify the connection string that you like, and then you should be able to use anything after that, any SQL Server.
All right. So I'm not sure. Was he breaking up, or is it breaking up on my end?
No, I was playing with the controls to kind of go back to Ash and Kelly as they were asking the questions. It's okay.
No, that's all right. I just I lost some of the audio from Ash. I don't know if it was on my side or his side. So if you guys didn't lose audio, it was on my side.
Yep, we're good.
Okay.
Yeah. So Chris, what you want to do is that, well, if you can click on that little minimize icon on the top right of that, so that way you get to see, that one collapse all. So this is how the source code is. I mean, we can of course drill down into each of the subfolders, but we don't have to do all that. So what you want to do is I want to build it in release mode. So go into the and then all we got to do is that build solution, either Control-Shift-B or go into build and build solution.
Yeah, I'm just waiting here on on my Visual Studio to come back from the release mode selection. So let's see what.
And the reason why we're doing this in a release mode is that if you do it in release mode, it builds all the components, all the installation packages for the various modules that are there in the platform, and puts that into that website install module folder that we saw. It's going to add more stuff in there. If you do it in debug mode, then those packages are not created. So we're just starting over, which is why we're going to have to do this in the release mode. So let's go ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click on build, and we'll let that process fire off.
So you just saw briefly at the bottom, it's trying to restore the NuGet packages. So it's all wired up to the NuGet, and hopefully it should be able to download all of that, and your build should finish. I think probably a minute or so, especially if you didn't have, if you're starting fresh and you didn't have some of the packages, it might take a minute or so to download those.
So your recommendation then is before you do any debugging, you should always build release at least once?
Yeah, release at least once. So there are two. Now here what we're trying to do is that we're trying to build the entire DNN from scratch, right? But if you're a module developer, you already have a DNN site, right? And then all you want to do is kind of break into that. In that case, you don't have to, you just build it into a debug mode, grab the DLL and put it into the bin folder off the site, and then kind of break into Visual Studio. And of course, you got to have the Visual Studio started as an administrator, and then it will break.
Yeah, so we can see going through that process. I went ahead and opened up the output window just so we can kind of see what's going on here as we build.
Yeah, and we could also go into that install module folder too to see if it's adding more zip files there.
So I'm navigating back into our source folder, platform, website, and then install, and then module here. And we can see at least one's been created so far, or a couple. So
actually, yeah, the DDR menu has come, and if you look at a timestamp, I guess that's the.
There we go. So I've just sorted descending by timestamp. So as we see new ones get compiled, they should show up at the top of the list here. Switching back over here, it looks like we're, I don't know, 80% done, maybe a little more.
Yeah, if you look into the drop down there for build, there might be a drop down there for NuGet or package managers. You don't see it for some reason. So that will give you any packages that it would have downloaded. I think you may have to go into view and other windows.
Yes, there we go. I was going to say the.
If there's anything like a package manager. But
compiling it has.
Yeah, but because it's already downloaded all of that, so you won't be able to get the historical data. That's okay.
So it looks like, actually, it does look like the build completed. So you got build 46 succeeded, 0 failed.
That's very good. So I think yeah.
Yep, sorry.
So you want to now make sure that the website folder is the startup folder. So you want to right click on that.
And set as startup project.
Right.
Okay.
Or hit F5.
We don't have to configure IIS or do anything else. Huh? We're just going to hit F5.
Yeah, try that. We'll see what happens.
All right. I hope it's this easy. This would be awesome. So I just hit F5 on the keyboard. Well, there we go. So
yeah, you want to hit OK.
Yeah, it's just prompting us to modify the web.config file to allow for debugging, which is fine. We're not going to actually be able to debug because we're still building in release mode, but that's something we can address after we get the installation complete. That's an interesting pop-up.
You scroll to the left on that. See, yeah, I don't know why it does that. So if you look into that, yeah, I think I want to get into the localhost and that port number, and then pop that probably in a different tab.
I'm just going to rip it out and see what happens there. All right, so I went ahead and loaded that. Now it's basically just give us a warning. We're trying to debug a release build. I'm just going to say continue debugging and tell it not to ask me again unless you suggest something else.
No, that's
So I've done that, and you can see here in Chrome it's still spinning, so it's going to take a sec to probably fire that up. All right, so while we're waiting, I know Ash, I get to see you in Denver next week at DNN Summit. Kelly, if I recall, you are not going. I don't remember exactly.
I'm not going to be able to make it this year. I was there last year, but not this time.
All right. Same for Peter. Peter's got to stay home and help with the family. He's been out and about quite a bit. So for those of you watching who aren't signed up for DNN Summit yet, you should definitely check it out if you can. It's in Denver next week, and I know I'm looking forward to it. It's a good time last year. I'm sorry, Peter and Kelly won't be there. We won't be able to eat at the diner again.
Yeah, indeed. We had a memorable burger out on that. What are they? It's not called the Strip, but
16th Street Mall, I think.
Exactly. Yep, 16th Street, something like that. And a very nice street, lots of bars and restaurants, lots of nice places to eat in the direct vicinity of the Hilton Hotel where the event is being held. I have to say, as a European, I was very pleasantly surprised by the feel of Denver that time of year.
It's got a great kind of larger city feel to the to the downtown area. They really renovated a lot. Looks nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. There we go. So now, took a sec, but we've got our installation process. So I don't know if you guys, Ashley, if you want to talk anything about the installation process. I'm just going to go ahead and kind of fill in some of my basic details that I try to put in when I'm doing an install.
Yeah.
What was that password there, Chris?
It's just DNN password if you want to know.
Yeah, standard installation process. I think this is where we're talking about what SQL Server. I mean, if you have a local SQL Express, I think that'll work.
Sure.
If you have a SQL Server, that will you're going to have to provide all the information for that here.
So it's interesting. The thing I noticed is it's switched off the default. Actually, the default isn't even an option now. Maybe for me, maybe it's just not picking up that SQL Express install. Let me just double check. I'm pretty confident I have SQL Express. Maybe I don't. Maybe I just have a full version of SQL. I could be wrong. I think I might have confused I do actually. So I don't have SQL Express. I have a full version. So we're going to go through that process instead. I confused my VMs. So I guess Ash, in this case, for me, I think it's going to be pretty straightforward. I just need to go into SQL Server and create the database. Is there anything else special?
All right. That's all. I think when you do that, we're going to want to make sure that the user or who the user is has all the access, which is in I think they call it super user.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to load up SQL Server Management Studio, and I'll kind of talk through the process of creating that database, making a user so that they have access to that database, and then we'll come back and finish the installation process. Of course, SQL Server Management Studio wants to update.
Always those MEF components. No clue what they're about, but they're always there.
Yeah, we use MEF partly in DNN as well, and what it does is that it kind of scans all the DLLs in the folder and kind of look for certain interfaces, and that's a little bit time consuming because that has to be done at the startup time itself.
A little bit. This is bloody time consuming, this.
I'm hoping to get two things faster, the Visual Studio and then...
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there's an update for Visual Studio, or SQL Server Management Studio as well, of course. So just to kind of walk through here, I've connected to my local SQL server. If you have a remote SQL server, you can use that as well. I'm going to go ahead and in the databases, I'm going to right-click, choose Create New Database. And just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to call it Dev. You can change that if you want to use something else. Just going to create that database, and then I'm going to go ahead and create a login. So I expanded the security node, right-click on the logins node, and I'm just going to create a user called Dev. Now, I'm going to make that user a SQL authentication user, give it a password. I'm going to uncheck the enforced password policy. This just makes it so it doesn't have constraints around character limits and expirations on the passwords. I'm going to choose the user mapping in order to assign that user, dev, to the database, also known as dev, and I'm going to make him the database owner. This for me is a pretty standard process of a fresh install of DNN. Is there anything you guys would do differently on your installs?
No, I just
on a local machine as a developer, I actually don't even bother doing this mapping, but this is good. All I do is that go into the, I think it's the the server roles.
Okay.
And I simply make this a sysadmin, but we're not recommending this for production, but this is what I do so that, because I install different versions of DNN and I just have one user.
Oh, okay.
To serve all my DNN databases. So I have like 10 databases on my machine at any time, so I don't have to bother doing this. So.
Yeah, I do. I personally like it, especially just from a production perspective, having a unique user per database. Sure. It's more maintenance, absolutely, but it does kind of separate your concerns in terms of who has access to what.
And in fact, we have a security analyzer in the newer versions of DNN now, and that actually flags you that if you have a SQL user that has more permission than what's actually needed, it's going to say that you should try to reduce that.
Gotcha.
I just want to jump in real quick. Have you checked, since this is a new install, or if someone has a new install, have you checked to make sure that the server accepts SQL login?
I haven't checked that. I know it because I know this database server, but let's see. Now I'm gonna ask you to tell me how to check because I don't remember.
I usually have to log off and log in.
There you go. That's it right there. SQL Server in Windows authentication mode.
The way to check it
trips up a lot of people.
It does, because if you like during an install, I always set it to SQL and Windows Auth, but by default it will be Windows Auth only. So to change it, you right-click on the server at the top, choose Properties, go to Security here, and then you can choose. Now, if you change it, it's going to require SQL Server to be restarted, the service to restart for that change.
All right. And so, who out of the panel here does not have PowerShell scripts that do all this? There you go. The silence is deafening.
I do it manually every time. All right. So I've created the database. I've created the user. Now we need to tell DNN where it's at. So it's my local server. So I can put in the local IP address. I'm lazy. I just put a single period. That'll point back to the local SQL server as well. My database name was dev. And I'm going to pause here and see what your guys' thoughts are on object qualifier.
So me being the developer at the core, I actually put ABC underscore or something like that, or a random, because I want to make sure that when developers are writing code, they follow the object qualifier, although it's redundant. It's not, we have to drop it at some time, but we do support it. And I want to make, sometimes developers have a tendency to hardcode the store procedure with DNN underscore. So I usually have something different so that I know if something's broken, it breaks right away. It's up to you. You can leave it as blank, or you can say DNN underscore or whatever, and I'll let others speak.
I personally, I tend not to actually use it. But if I'm doing development for a release, for instance, I'll definitely put that in there, because many years ago I learned that that can trip you up if you don't get the object qualifier in there in your scripts.
Yeah, or the DB owner, for that matter. But like, yeah, I agree with Kelly. In daily practice, I don't use it. Many people hate it for obvious reasons. Just for people who are new to the platform, the reason it was there was that back in the day when DNN started, SQL databases, hosted SQL databases at hosting providers were quite expensive. And DNN allowed you to run multiple DNN instances on a single SQL database. Now, as soon as we shifted to ASP.NET authentication, that all became impossible, and at the same time also irrelevant, because all of a sudden databases became much easier with SQL Express coming out.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But from a developer's perspective, and I haven't used it in years, I'm not going to put it in here. From a third-party developer perspective, if you're creating extensions for the platform, especially if you're selling them, but even if you're creating open source ones, you almost have to, because if you don't, you might create a module that doesn't use object qualifier and you don't replace it, put it in the right places in the scripts, and what will happen is someone will purchase your module, go and install it, and they use the object qualifier, and everything goes wacky at that point, because database names or table names are different. Procs might be missing due to the naming. So it is a recommended practice. Unfortunately, for depending on what you want to support, I would say it's pretty, I don't know if there's any way to tell the usage of it. It's probably very minimally used anymore, but it's one of those things that doing it after your development is a real pain in the rear. If you do it ahead of time and ingrain it into your development practices, it's a lot easier to manage.
For sure.
So from here, I'm going to go to the security option, and I'm not using integrated at this point. Now, why am I not using integrated? I've chosen to use the SQL authentication instead of Windows auth. So the integrated would be a Windows authentication. So I'm going to go ahead and switch to user defined, and I can give my username and then my password for that SQL user, which I just created. And I, for some reason, feel like I keep typing the password wrong, so I'm going to type it 3 times. So after that, similar as Peter mentioned, and similar to the object qualifier, there's also this notion of the database owner with different ownership roles and security in SQL Server. There are probably even fewer cases where the database owner is different than object qualifier, but there's still cases out there where it's another tokenized thing that you can do in your SQL scripts. Again, I never use it. I never change it. It's always DBO, so I'm just going to leave it as the database owner option here checked. And then finally, we have our product improvement program information. We're going to send all of our social security information, all our kids' information back to Ash. It goes directly to his house. No, I'm just kidding. It sends just anonymous usage information back to DNN for product improvement purposes. So I'll leave that checked.
Yeah, we just trying to figure out what feature of DNN, well, mostly around persona bar, which ones you use the most. So we can make decision mostly around retiring something. And a lot of time, it's really hard to keep everything up to date. So we always wanted to see if people are actually using it or not, so we could retire it.
Sure.
Though if you're using it on a dev, if you're actually doing development on this, won't leaving that box checked kind of skew your results? That's always been my thought.
I mean, we know that when we run our reports, we know to exclude local hosts, we know to exclude IPs, we know to exclude LVH.me, DNN Dev, and things like that. So while we have this open, you want to go back to the website install module folder, Chris, so we can see how that zip file list will slowly start to dwindle down, because as the modules are getting installed, you can have perhaps separate this window and kind of show both of them in parallel. We've got 37 items here. And since we're debugging, it might take a bit longer to have everything installed.
Yeah. Just go back. So we can see, actually, you can see right here, it's trying to install the edit bar UI install. So depending on where that one is, it's actually this one right here. That should be the next one probably that drops out of the list. Yeah. And it just did.
I think if you pay attention to the count at the bottom, it was 37. Just a few seconds back, it's 35 now. So it's eventually going to go down to 0, or maybe 1, because the placeholder doesn't go away. It just stays there, just an empty file. Now, if you're seeing here the persona bar, there are so many of those. Back in the days, we're trying to put everything into .NU.dll, and slowly we're trying to put having each one of them a component of their own, so you could choose to not install. So, for example, if I don't want to have this SEO, for example, the 5th one from the bottom or the 6th one from the bottom, I simply delete it from here and it doesn't get installed. So if you want to keep your installation light, you have the option to do that, which is why we are trying to build this in a modular way, as modular as possible. And as the time goes, ASP.NET Core, eventually, when we build it, it's going to be even more modular.
All right, so we're down to 21 items, most of them being the remnants of the persona bar there.
And one thing about this Telerik while this is going on is you can see here the size of this Telerik is like 14 meg. Telerik has been with DNN for a long time. It is now installed right now. So our goal is to actually remove it as soon as we are able to do it. And we encourage people to use modern programming techniques, like not rely much on Telerik, instead use SPA modules or MVC formats to build their extensions.
Can I just say, yay! Can't wait for the day when that's no longer in there.
We've had a good run with Telerik, and the main reason why we're trying to get rid of it is that it's a bit heavy. It was very useful back in the day when there were so many ready-made controls out there. Now, with the new modern frameworks for the front-end development, that's no longer the case. In fact, for our React DNN Core, we built around 35 components or so, maybe 40. Drop-down, page controls, and whatnot. They're all written in JavaScript and pretty lightweight. This is kind of becoming extinct now.
Yeah, well, a lot of people will be happy once that episode is behind us.
Yeah, and not to mention such a huge product to Telerik by itself. It had a security issue in the past. Though it got fixed, the product can have security issues. So that was also one of the security issues. I think earlier, yeah, it was last year or so. So we would like to have less and less of third-party components. Product,
right, it's creating the site now, right? So it's running the template.
Yeah, so there is a template which contains the components of a default site, things like how many pages, what skin, what the look and feel is, what's the name of the site, which is actually in a config file, not in the template. But yeah, so it is right now creating a website, which is essentially a portal to.
Oh, we have white smoke.
We hopefully no smoke, but so it did say completed. So I'm going to go ahead and click on visit the website, and that should take us back in there. That's probably going to take a sec again to kind of compile everything that just got installed, but we should be able to see that site here in a moment. And I apologize if I think I'm starting to see some internet connection issues. I lost your guys' audio for a while.
Yeah, we lost your video for a sec.
Hopefully I don't drop out of here.
Currently, I think we're also just missing your video stream. Oh, there it is.
Okay. So it's it's just trying to navigate to the site for the first time. So
yeah, which is I don't think it's a recompile, but it means just that the worker process is reloading all the DLLs.
Sure. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, and I think what you're going to see is another sort of a slowdown when you hit the login.
Yeah.
That's where it tries to recompile all the ASCX. Well, but that's usually a one-time hit that you're going to have to pay.
Mm-hmm.
So can you say that again, Ash? So it's the worker process is loading everything now, right? But you're saying when you hit login, it'll slow down again?
Right. So when you hit log, so there are two things, right? All the bin, all the DLLs in the bin and whatnot, so it copies into a temporary location within ASP.NET.
Sure.
And then there's a general cost to just start the application. But after your first install, it also, after the site is actually running, it still goes through, looks into all the control files, .ascx, and does a compile. So there are two things. One is just the starting of the site. When the site is started, it goes through all the ASCX and compiles it, and then keeps an image of that, so it doesn't compile it again till the time someone makes a change into any of those ASCX files. And there's a whole logic behind it. It's we don't know how and what it does. And in fact, in a large, very large site, if you have too many file changes going on, often Microsoft will restart ASP.NET. And there are some settings we've talked about in blogs as to how you can optimize it. But yeah, so the site has to be installed, sorry, started, and then the control have to be compiled. That's one time though.
Okay. So there we go.
Well, I think it automatically logged you in here. So, but if you were to log off and log in, then it might take a little bit longer, but that's okay. We're not going to try that right now. So yeah, there you go. You got the sparkling Personova bar here.
Yeah.
That's version number 911. I think the next thing we want to do is to kind of break it into the Visual Studio and kind of step through something.
Yeah.
So let's stop the Visual Studio and go into the debug mode. I think we're going to have to compile it again. Just do a build solution.
So I switched back over here. Switch back to Visual Studio, hit Shift F5 just to kill the debug process. And I'm going to switch back into debug mode as opposed to release mode up here at the top, which again, going to take a sec to do here. Now, so Ash, can you talk about some of what I'm seeing in my output window right now? You know where these could not find file messages are coming from?
Yeah, that's odd. Maybe after sometimes it cleans up files. Mm-hmm. We'll see if it compiles or not.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we didn't notice any problems when we ran it the first time, so I'm imagine I have a hard time believing that it's an actual problem. But okay, so I'm back into debug mode now. What do you recommend?
Yeah, you want to go into the build and then just click build solution.
Yeah. Okay.
And then let's go back to that folder, the module folder that we keep looking. I think what we're going to see here is that we're not going to see any files here, any new zip file, because those get created only when you're in the release mode. And so in the debug mode, what it's doing is that if you go into the 2 levels up, and then we're going to go into the bin folder. So, and if you sort it by the date timestamp, so it's 341. So it's just about right now. So it's actually compiling those things into debug mode.
Sure. So it's still compiling over here. Now this is all running inside of a VM inside of my my Surface Book, so it doesn't have the full might of all the resources available. So it is a little slow on my machine.
What are you using for your VM software, Chris?
I use VirtualBox.
Okay.
Which is Oracle's open source. I don't know if it's open source or free virtual platform. I use it on my machines at home. I use it on my machine at work. It's just an easy way to have multiple environments.
Do you guys know if Azure offers free VMs for developers where they can set something? I thought there was something that from time to time they offer free credits up to 6 months or so. Do you guys know?
Well,
I know they had that when I first signed up, but I haven't seen lately what they have.
Yeah, and I think it depends on different programs too. So I know I get some Azure credits from BizSpark program from years ago that I could use for a VM or for firing up a server and running. But I'm assuming they have images you can choose from. I haven't tried to build anything from an image in quite some time.
Yeah, because that might be a faster way for new developers to actually get onto the DNN or anything Microsoft, because you don't have to install then the SQL Server, or you don't have to worry about slowing down your main computer, right? Because VMs aren't as efficient.
Yeah, that's definitely correct. All right, so we do have a number of
Yeah, I think
build
we're going to
problems. And
ignore majority. Yeah, we're going to ignore majority of them. I think what we're more interested right now is that whether the .nuke.dll got created.
Yeah, so these errors actually come from, all of them come from the .nuke.website project. If you check in that list.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like the whole thing is from that. So Ash, what were you saying we were looking for? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is I think during the installation, it deleted all the .cs file or something. So we got to go back and take a look why we're seeing these errors. But what is most important is the .nuke.dll. So go back to the bin folder and take a look into that one and look into the timestamp for that.
Yeah, so it does have a timestamp of 341. So
yeah,
it
and
did compile.
So that's what we're interested in. I think so. We're going to go back and put a breakpoint on that. Let's see. Put into the tab controller, for example. So you're going to have to find that, and you're going to scroll up.
See if Visual Studio will find it for me. Again, it's been so long since I've been in the source code of DNN. So these are unit tests. There we go. Library.
Yeah, within that somewhere.
Tab controller. Is this what I'm looking for?
Yep. Is there one to do create tab or add tab? Yeah, add tab. Yeah, let's just look for all the add tabs and just hit F9. I think there might be line 946, five lines below that. We want to hit a breakpoint into that one as well. Let's see, because there are variants of the same API. I think this should be it. And let's run it. What we're trying to do here is that we're trying to add a page into the CMS, and we're going to see if it hits the breakpoint here or not. And then we're going to see what kind of data comes in. Tab is a very fundamental thing in, I think you want to say no. Oh, sorry, I think we want to still continue, yeah.
Yeah, so we'll go ahead and continue. If we had no, it would actually just stop the deployment there. So that's weird.
That trick again. I don't know since when this is happening. I think it's something in the Chrome or what.
Yeah, I don't know what I haven't seen that before. Of course, I haven't tried to run the source. So while I'm waiting for that to compile, or sorry, while I'm waiting for that to load, I'm going to actually just switch back over here real quick and see if I can find my Solution Explorer window. Where'd it go? There it is. I'm just going to hit properties on that project because I want to see, I guess, like I said, I haven't looked at it in a while. I'm curious how it's set up to make its call. So under properties, we can go to web. Huh, that's interesting. So it is, I mean, it's set up to use project URL and IIS Express. I'm not sure what's causing that, that weird loading to occur.
It's probably just a Chrome feature.
It might be. Maybe it's something with my default.
No, I've seen
or it's
that
because
too.
of this. You seen that in other browsers?
What Microsoft has tried to do is that I think they've tried to build some hooks so you can actually debug JavaScript from the Chrome into your Visual Studio, and I think there's some mess up there.
Gotcha.
If you could go back to the Visual Studio.
Okay, where to in here?
Oh, I think we're gonna want to go back to the page.
Oh, to the page. Sorry. Yeah, so it's not finding framework default or default. Excuse me, framework default page.
Because I think it did not compile something, right?
Well, the website project itself didn't compile. We know that. Not sure where this is coming from. Do you know what library that's in? Is it just in .NET.dll?
It should be there, yeah. Maybe look for that.
Okay. I don't know why my Solution Explorer keeps going away. There we go. Pin that guy. Okay, so it's, well.
It's in the .NET.website.dll.
Yeah.
And that was the one, indeed, that didn't build.
So I'm guessing it's back to these errors, right?
Yeah. Well, we've got 86 errors to get through. I'm sure that...
So I think the installation process, maybe we can go back to the folder to see if the files are actually there or not. So
Sure. So I'll go back to platform.website. And we can see here, like in default.aspx is there. It does not have a code behind file.
Right.
Now, I'm going to, unless you guys want me to go a different path, I'm actually just going to go to the zip file to that same path and see what the zip file contains. So,
yeah, no, I'm beginning to sense where this comes from. I wouldn't be surprised if all the .cs files got removed somehow during the installation. Ash, do you think that's a possibility?
No, that is what it is, and that's why I personally don't debug like that. I have my DNN site installed through the proper installation package, and then anything that I need to debug is that then I compile the source separately, and then I copy that DLL that I want to debug into the bin folder, and then I kind of do debug attach to an IS process.
So
and that's how I do it.
I'm gonna, just for brevity's sake, I'm gonna propose the quick fix for this, which is I'm just gonna copy the entire contents here.
Except the web.config.
Well, there is no web config.
Oh,
so
okay.
I checked. I was concerned about that too. And I'm not going to copy the install folder either, just because I don't want to get all those packages again. If there's any there, well, there are some there. So I'm just going to copy and then go back to the actual folder, because that was, again, copied from the zip file.
Yeah.
Go to the same path and then paste. Now, I can probably, when it says, do you want to overwrite, if it prompts me, I could probably tell it to skip everything that already exists.
Right. And I think in the install folder, there's still a code behind for install.aspx.
Oh, okay. So I might have to grab that then too.
You might have to grab that one too. But anyway, it'll be quite limited.
I think installation is not part of the DLL, so it might be okay.
What was that? Oh, so you're saying the install folders files do not get compiled into the website?
Yeah, it might not be. It might not. So it might be okay.
So Ash, quick question. There's a reason why these C# files have been deleted. Can you talk us through the reasoning behind this, and when and why this is happening?
Yeah, it's part of the whole installation, right? When it gets compiled, I don't know the specific, but I think ASP.NET copies that. But I can tell you about the install folder.
Mm-hmm.
We actually delete the files from the install folder, anything that execute. That's something that we do from within DNN because there were some security issues. And I think the install sort of runs outside of DNN per se, outside of the DNN framework per se. It doesn't necessarily have all the security that a typical DNN control that ASCX that has, where DNN enforces its own security. So anytime we see a .aspx file in a DNN instance, it's always a concern, and installation are separate ASPX files. So we want to make sure that that's all gone as soon as the installation is done, and so is the upgrade wizard. And it's just a caution for anybody, if any third-party component that you install, look to see if it's got any ASPX file. I'll be suspicious. That kind of sort of bypasses from the DNN security, and you can do anything. It's almost like a standalone page.
Right, but so my guess is if we want this package to be runnable like we're trying to do now, we'll need to kind of revisit the processes that go on during install.
Right. Yeah, Peter, because I think what you were wanting to do was that I think what you wanted to get to a point where, hey, I hit F5, I grab the source code, I compile, I hit F5, I should see stuff, right? So you're seeing that. You actually went through the installation process. You were not able to debug it, and because the site kind of killed itself, right? It cleans itself because you're trying to do everything within itself, right? So as part of the installation, it cleaned the .cs file, and that's so you're not going to be able to get both of those together. So we were successful in hitting F5 and getting the installation and the site operational. But in order to truly debug it, we're going to have to do in two phases. We're going to have the site installed separately, and then we compile separately, copy the DLL, and then attach to the process. Perhaps that's that could be our second hangout.
Well, so let me take a step back. So for some reason, my file system's just extremely slow to copy right now. I'm hoping it'll speed up, but I'm not too confident it will. I guess do you think what I'm doing here of recopying those files over should, I'm not saying it's a great step, but it should correct the issue where the install process removed files that in this environment we technically would not want removed, right?
Yeah, but I think, Chris, at the same time, I think we're like, for example, during the installation, we also removed a lot of SQL provider files, all the script file, or sorry, the config file. There are lots of config files which are used to clean up different files during installation. So we do delete several things, and those are now kind of coming back.
But it makes sense to do that in a production environment, but not in the source environment. And again, I haven't worked in the source environment in 10 years because I don't need to. If I'm building for DNN, I'm extending DNN. I personally use the install package. If I need to debug DNN, I install the debug libraries, and then I can debug without having the full source. But where this would be useful, and it's a pretty small use case, but it's for the people that want to get in and really use the platform and extend it in non-recommended ways to do other things, maybe to hack it to do things that you wouldn't necessarily recommend. The downside of doing that, if you go down that path, is you kind of you go down your own road. When there's a new release, your changes are now potentially in conflict with that new release. Mm-hmm. Where if you don't modify the source, you don't go in here like we're doing just for demo purposes, you don't run that risk as much.
Although you are, the other use case, of course, is if you want to do some pull requests to the project itself.
It is. So, excuse me, I'm coughing here. And that's where honestly, I think if you're doing the pull requests, you're probably not, maybe I'm wrong, you're probably not starting from the source package. You're probably cloning the repo in GitHub and starting there. But I would assume that the process we just went through, which was compile, run the install, I would assume you're going to run into the same problem once you complete that installation.
Yeah, I can attest to that. I mean, for contributing to the platform, you'll be using the cloning the repo. However, if anything is deleted during the install, of course, it becomes a little bit easier to correct using your source tree or something, whatever source control platform you're using to bring those files back.
Potentially, if you're aware, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, you're right.
So what I'm trying to do here, I'm trying to cancel my copy paste because I copied from within the zip file. I'm trying to now extract the zip file and then copy it.
Yeah.
Might not be any faster, but I'm just trying to speed up the process on my side.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how far we get this. So anyway, I mean, all right, that seems to be going faster, the extraction. Yeah.
No, it's not any faster.
It's not any faster. Well, I mean, and of course the other option would be to get a .NET-Nuke.website DLL that we already have, but it will still try to compile it, right? But it doesn't matter.
If you have it, so
yeah, it wouldn't throw the error. Put it that way. It wouldn't throw that error, that yellow screen of death, if the DLL was there. So, but you wouldn't be able to step through that code, which was one of the purposes of this exercise, was to step through.
You wouldn't be able to step through the code within the .website.
Yeah.
You would be able to do that within the
exactly. So if you have a 911.NET-Nuke.website DLL somewhere, then that would work as well, Chris.
I certainly have on my machine.
Yeah, but you're not, unless through osmosis you can get it there.
I don't have it yet because I'm still extracting. So.
Yeah, no, it's okay. It's okay. Well, we get the point. But I mean, you
can download it from the install package as well, and just grab that particular DLL.
Yeah.
I've lost my VM kit on the internet. It's just
it's great because this kind of stuff, I mean, it Murphy's Law applies, right? Where stuff needs to break down.
You have offended the demo gods, Chris.
Yep.
I know. We made it further than last week, just so everyone knows. We actually tried to do this last week.
That's true. The VM kind of ground to a halt that I had.
It's the same thing.
So it sounds
we made it much further.
It sounds like maybe next time we want to do how to clone from source and do PR.
I think that would be not a bad idea at all.
Well, so it's, I mean, that we can definitely talk about topic. I think there's another interesting topic, which is doing your dev with an install package and still debugging using the debug libraries.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't have to be the next one, but I think that's a useful one as well, because I think in terms of extension development, it gives you just as much power without some of this headache. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, guys, if you're okay with that, I think we're gonna we should round it off here, because this will otherwise drag on for another half hour at least before we get that. But first of all, I want to thank Ash for our invitee for today. Thanks, Ash, for sharing this with us. Thanks also for continuing to work on the DNN platform, doing all your wonderful coding.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Chris, for working through this VM, giving us all this time, getting this far, and some great ideas. I think we're off to a wonderful flying start with this. And thank you, Kelly. Thanks for your comments and your observations. So with that, I would like to round off. We've used at least an hour of YouTube time. For those of you that have been looking at this broadcast, thanks for watching, and thanks for trying out DNN. So until next time.